When you are sad, the book grows larger, as if to comfort you. When you despair, it can narrow to a single poem. And when joy arrives, it's hard to read it all. Blinking at the page dazzle, the words break apart into letters, dancing there, unable to calm down. It's 1985. I'm in the 5th grade and spending the night at my friend Courtney's house for the first time. As we got ready for bed, we brushed our teeth side by side in her bathroom, both wearing long nightgowns, mine with a picture of Garfield the cat on the front. We climbed into her 4-poster bed and lay with our heads propped on pillows against the headboard. She reached over to her nightstand, grabbed a book, and opened it to the bookmarked page. It was a picture book I hadn't seen before, an illustrated children's Bible she had to read from every night. I scooted close to her to look at the pictures while she read out loud to me. At home the following day, I told Mom about the book and asked if she believed in God. Mom said she believed there was something more out there, a kind of higher power that some call God. She also mentioned reincarnation, the soul reborn, a belief I would later learn that came from her father. "Why don't we go to church?" I asked. "God is everywhere," she said. "He doesn't require we attend church." "What if I want to go to church?" I asked. She said she would take me if I wanted to go. "When is church?" I asked, in which she answered, very strategically, "Early Sunday morning." "Never mind," I said, and that ended my religious education as a child. In May of 2020, I was listening to an interview with poet Gregory Orr. Orr grew up in the Hudson Valley, in the rural Hudson Valley, his father a country doctor, his family a devout religious family. When Orr was 12, he experienced an unimaginable tragedy, a fatal accident where he was the one left standing. His parents, drowning in their own grief, weren't equipped to console him. When he turned to the Bible, only one story gave him a structure in which he could place himself: the story of Cain and Abel. The story did help him kind of move through the world, but he was mentally, emotionally, and spiritually lost. 4 years later, in a high school English class, during a unit on poetry, Orr began to put some order to the existential angst that was thrust upon him at such a young age. It was in writing that he could explore and express the questions inside of himself and begin to rebuild meaning for himself. It was in the reading where he became a student of the human condition, where he eventually found salvation. Writing and reading became his life's work. In the 2020 podcast, Orr says, "I think what we do is when we're reading poems, when we're listening to songs, we're looking for the things that will sustain us. We're trying to find what it is that's true and deep and sustaining our spirits and the dignity of our own world." Orr goes on to say, Honor your individual identity. Gather together all the poems and fragments and stuff that have shaken your spirit and sustained it. Create your own Bibles. That's a job that we have, it seems to me. June 1992. Days after my high school graduation, friends and I gathered to listen to the newly released album Angel Dust by the rock band Faith No More. As I lay on the living room floor in my friend Justin's house, the heavy bass rumbling through my body, I heard words that would stay with me for decades and eventually make it into my Bible. I'm a perfectionist, and perfect is a skinned knee. Perfect is a skinned knee. As a teenage girl in the early 90s, I was uncomfortable with the culture's obsession with physical beauty. Like other teenage girls at the time, I read Cosmopolitan magazine, I took all their quizzes and failed. I read the beauty advice. And one day, when I was about 16 or 17 years old and I was riding the bus by myself, thumbing through the latest issue, I became unnerved that the magazine didn't say anything new, but it seemed that the stakes kept getting higher. The beauty I was being sold, because it was always about buying something, the beauty I was being sold was unattainable. I would never be any of the women who graced the pages. I could never own enough beauty products. And then came the comforting part. I didn't want to be those women. I didn't want to buy all those products. So as I lay on Justin's living room floor at 18 years old, with the vastness of adulthood before me, the language, perfect is a skinned knee, helped me define beauty in a way that made sense to me. I associate skinned knees with riding my bike as a kid. I associate skinned knees with play and joy and a sense of freedom. Perfect is messy. Perfect is falling down and getting up. 2 years later, at the age of 20, I experienced my rock bottom, my unimaginable tragedy, an unintentional act where I was the cause of a friend's life-altering injury. I took responsibility, paid my civic dues, and the physical world, which I call the exterior world, moved on, as it always does. But when the exterior world moved on, my interior world, my thinking and feeling world, started to loop. It circled over and again, reliving the before and after of my worst moment. In the process, the healthy guilt that I felt turned into a parasitic shame. I didn't just believe that I was not a good person. I knew I was not a good person. I didn't just believe that I was a worthless person. I knew I was a worthless person. It didn't take long to know how to move forward physically. I got up and went to work, I spent time with friends, and I walked on the beach. But I didn't know how to emotionally and mentally move forward. My brain on loop kept trying to rewrite the past. About 9 months later, while camping with friends in Stone Mountain, Georgia, I stood on a picnic table with a handful of others singing, all of us singing the Eagles, which we're all want to do, right? We were all singing from Hotel California. You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. The song is an allegory that is open for interpretation. But on that day, as I was trying to move forward, the song told me there was nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. I could move to another country. I could numb myself with work or with substances, but I would always know what had happened. My Hotel California was my interior world, my thoughts, my emotions. The only way to break the loop, the only way to truly move forward was to make peace with my heart and my mind and my spirit, which meant I needed to make peace with tragedy. Jon Kabat-Zinn had just published his book, Wherever You Go, There You Are, but it hadn't crossed my path yet. The Eagles did it for me. So for a while, music kept saving me. Nina Simone urged me to answer the question, what have I got that nobody can take away? Harry Chapin understood the loneliness I felt when he sang, Anywhere's a Better Place to Be. Life lessons, moral lessons, they can be found anywhere. In this way, my mom was onto something when she said God is everywhere. Jerry Garcia taught it to me this way when he sang, sometimes you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. Music found me, but I needed to intentionally search for meaning and purpose. A year or two later, I tried reading the Christian Bible and attended a couple of Sundays at a Unity church. The focus of the teachings didn't work for me. There was this learning curve to first have to know the Bible and the stories and then interpret them, and then I could internalize their teachings. And I was seeking a more direct path. In hindsight, I could have read the Bible on my own. I could have read it in the 5th grade. But the Bible and church are so intertwined that I didn't see the Bible for what it actually is, a book. We're trying to find what it is that's true and deep and sustaining our spirits and the dignity of our own world. Around the same time, while listening to music in my friend Juliet's living room, I picked up a copy of Lao Tzu's Tao Te Ching from her coffee table, the Stephen Mitchell translation. Turning to the first page, I saw how the chapters were formatted like poems, and I felt comforted. There is something about words surrounded by a lot of space that really speaks to me. And so after reading the first page, I knew the book was important, but I wasn't ready for it. So I bought a copy, put it on my shelf, and was content in knowing it was there when I needed it. As someone who unintentionally injured someone else, I spent many years hyper-aware of my actions. This is not to say I always made the right decision. I was young, broken, and learning. Still learning. But it is to say that I locked into the mindfulness concept of being in the moment as a way to be accountable for my actions. By this time, I had a copy of Kabat-Zinn's book and others like it, which were very helpful. But I still sought simpler language. So I picked up the Tao Te Ching again. And though I have incorporated many lessons from the book into my own Bible, my first was this. Do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? Can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? I'm a collector of words and sayings. I used to collect comic strips from the newspaper. In my 20s, I would tape them to the wall, but after moving many times, they lived in a folder, and now I have way too many digital folders full of them. After listening to Orr's interview in 2020, I filled a sketchbook with quotes. I added images and comic strips. And the sketchbook entries were specific to the first 3 to 4 years after my worst moment, at a time when I was trying to find meaning, when every moment held a life lesson. Sometimes you get shown the light in the strangest of places if you look at it right. The process of building my own Bible, of piecing a kind of history of my interior life together, provided the opportunity to see who I am as a summation of who I have been. A young girl who liked Garfield a lot, who liked riding her bike, a teenager listening to music with her whole body, a young adult who was filled with shame and still continued to strive. I see that person persevering. I initially wrote this sermon for July 6th, the weekend of the July 4th weekend. But this last part is still relevant for today. I would be remiss not to mention the latest holiday, especially as we have now entered the 250th year of our nation's Declaration of Independence, a founding philosophy for an experimental nation, a philosophy that, on the one hand, conserved the power of those who wrote and signed the document, those who engineered the colony's break from England, who wanted to secure the privilege of the few and already dominant members of society as they created government in the new nation. On the other hand, the language in the Declaration of Independence, the ideals set forth in the Declaration, honored individual identity and existence. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. The ideals paved a pathway, a long, challenging, at times unimaginably tragic pathway. A path that we are still on, and as far as I can tell, will always be walking. But these ideals paved a pathway for those with unequal power and freedoms to embody their self-evident truths, to fight for their unalienable rights, to make a meaningful difference in their lives. The United States, our perfect union, has always had skin knees. As we think of the songs, the poems, and fragments to include in our personal Bibles, as we gather the wisdom of others and see ourselves reflected in their words and actions, as we feel our shared humanity and double down on our moral philosophy, we stand on the shoulders of 250 years and all of those before us who suffered, organized, fought, triumphed, celebrated, and persevered for all of us to be recognized as we. Find what it is that's true and deep and sustaining our spirits and the dignity of our own world. Blessed be.